Welcome to the first episode of Gym Growth Tactics. Host Zack Bartell and entrepreneur Josel Mateo share their insights and experiences in the world of business ownership and gym management. In this candid conversation, they discuss the challenges and rewards of entrepreneurship, the importance of purpose and alignment, and the skills needed to thrive in this competitive landscape. Join them as they explore the journey of starting and running a gym, tackling financial planning, sales, leadership, and the art of balancing personal and professional growth. This episode is packed with valuable lessons and practical advice for anyone navigating the entrepreneurial path.
Welcome to the Gym Growth Tactics podcast. This is our inaugural episode. I'm here with my friend and client, long-term consulting client of mine, Josel Mateo. Josel was my first business consulting client. He signed on with me, I think, in March 2020 or February 2020, one of those months when I first started out. And we've kept in touch either weekly or bi-weekly for 3 years as we've both grown our businesses and done some cool things. And I think Josel has a lot to offer in terms of his experience going from solo, entrepreneur, solo operator within another business to taking over the business to expanding and things like that. So I thought he'd be a great guest to have on. I think we can all learn a lot from him and his story, and even just some of the things we just chatted about too. So, Josel, I kind of want to start with let's talk a little bit about your background, how you got into having your own facility and your background in sports and what led you there.
Sure. So thanks for having me on, Zach. I'm really always excited when I get an opportunity like this, especially with you. Yeah. So background, I always like to try to give the shortened version because I see like every clip in my head always play when people ask this question. I played soccer at a high level growing up, traveling everywhere. And my goal was always to go pro, obviously to play in college, which I kind of did. I went to play Division III. I kept getting hurt. And then I had to make a decision between, do I want to be a physical therapist, which was back then, or do I want to keep playing soccer and pursue this dream? And the rational brain in me wanted to pursue physical therapy school. And yeah, so I started working in a clinic, and then I had the opportunity to start working at a gym. Back then it was the old Crank at the same time. And that was maybe my junior or senior year of college. So I was really deciding like, okay, which path is my future going to go? I really don't know. I do like helping athletes. I know what it's like to go through the struggles and using the skills that you develop playing your sport when it comes to life after sport. And at that time, I was going to do like a big identity change. Like, I'm not Josel the soccer player anymore. Like, who am I? So a lot of stuff was happening at once. As I worked in both jobs longer and longer, I started to realize like, okay, I don't think physical therapy is for me. I didn't want to keep doing school. I didn't really like the environment. I didn't feel like I could be myself. And I kind of went like the strength and conditioning coach route. So I had the opportunity to intern at Crank back then, and it was primarily just adults training. I was lucky enough that some parents asked like, hey, do you guys train athletes? And I was like, now we do. So I started off with maybe 2 kids back then, just kids of parents that we trained, and then it took off from there.
So Crank was a facility already, adult training facility, and then you started the athletes training within the walls of Crank, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Got you. And then, not to get sidetracked real quick, but what kind of athlete were you? Were you like naturally gifted at soccer? Were you always the type that you were training yourself kind of because that's what I usually see with a lot of strength coaches is the strength coach is always like the athlete that initially wasn't super gifted, but had to work really, really hard to hone in the skills, especially in like the weight room. And that's where you fall in love with the weight room. But what kind of athlete were you?
I mean, this is something with soccer players. Like, we don't have that weight room culture like maybe baseball or football players do. So for me, it was more so, what opportunities do I have to make myself better, to compete for positions that other kids aren't doing? I just like to grind, I guess. Like, I'm not going to say, like, I was a technical player. Like, I was good with the ball. I had good IQ. I wasn't like a below average player, to be honest. But I just wanted every edge that I could against my competition, against my teammates, against people in my position. And also, like, I want to look jacked. Like, I want to look like Cristiano Ronaldo at, when I was 12, 11. So I was looking at those kind of players and I was like, wow, what can I do to be like that? So yeah, I think I was always shooting for more than the average. And I think my parents kind of instilled that in me.
I love it. Okay. So you started the kids program overnight over at Crank. Then what happened from there?
So I was coaching soccer just because opportunities came to me from past clubs that I played for and people that I knew. So I was coaching soccer and doing the strength conditioning at the same time. Obviously, with my background, more soccer players kind of gravitated to me as soon as they started seeing that I was doing that. Because I say back then, it doesn't feel like that long ago, but back then, like strength conditioning for soccer and performance was not as prevalent as it is now. Like I think
What years are we talking about right now?
I wish I could tell you. 2017, maybe? 2017?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we
5-6 years ago. Yeah.
So yeah, I just started building clientele. I started ending up managing the gym that I was interning at, and I started seeing, okay, same going back to soccer, like what edge can we get against competition around us? Okay, let me look at our sales. Let me look at our marketing. Let me see how we can get more people. What kind of community outreach can we do? And I kind of just fell into this role of, okay, I want to run this gym like it's mine. I want to operate it like it's mine. And that's the best advice that my boss then, LJ, ever gave me. As soon as I got the key, he's like, okay, run this like it's your gym. And like back then, I didn't really understand like what that meant. And I guess I kind of just sorted it out myself. So then we fast forward more, athletes clientele is starting to build up, and then COVID comes around, and our athlete side was actually bigger than the adult side at this point. So our lease ended like that, I guess December 2020. I had some cash saved, and the athlete side was picking up, and things started to reopen. So then I was working with you for a little bit. I think all throughout quarantine, we really like buckled down and built everything with the plan to open a facility in maybe a couple years. I guess I was just searching on Google one day, like what's around. And then I found a location right across the street. So I just took a jump, and now we're, I guess, going on 3 years.
So talk to me a little bit about, I think a lot of the people that are listening to this are gym owners. And, one of the things I obviously want to get into is the financial side of things. But when it came down to when you were starting out, were you renting space from Crank or from LJ, or was there a profit split? What was the deal?
I got very lucky that since I pretty much boosted the business ever since I got in, he just let me rock and, like I said, run it like it was my own, and we paid separately. As I started to make more money with the athletes, I started splitting rent with them.
Got you. Okay. And then obviously, at some point LJ wanted to focus more on his career and family outside of the gym, and sort of handed the keys to you in terms of running, obviously not just your program with the kids, but then taking over the adults as you opened your own space. Tell me a little bit more about that decision, and then opening your own space and going from there.
I always black out things like this from my memory, just because it's always I always feel like it's like a tornado. So going back to then, what was it like merging the businesses? It was a fucking nightmare. Can I? Yeah, that shit was a nightmare, to be honest. Yeah. And I don't know, I kind of just figured it out as I went. I tried to see what was best. I mean, this is something that you always say, like, it just feels like you jumped off the cliff and you're building the plane. It's like you're flying down the cliff. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it felt like. I was just putting out fire after fire while trying to build something at the same time. Eventually, I got it to a spot where I can manage both, I guess, sides of the business pretty well. But obviously, the biggest thing was delegating a lot of things that I already built out to the next person in line, which I could focus in different places. I don't remember your other questions, but...
Well, yeah, just talking about, getting your own space. So I obviously, taking everything over on your own, then focusing on both the adults and the kids was a shit show at first. I remember our conversations with even our metric sheet, having to create a dual metric sheet pretty much with two businesses that were very much separate. They weren't integrated whatsoever. And that can be, there's a lesson there too. I don't know if you can speak on running maybe two businesses or two business models underneath one roof. It's hard. I mean, it's not easy, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it changed when we shifted our priority or figuring out what the bare minimums are for both, because then I could just remove a lot of the fluff and say, these are the only metrics that matter. This is all I care about. I'm going to put all the effort onto these. And then as soon as we did that, I was straight.
Yeah. So if you could go back and you're back in that moment where you're into the new space, you've taken over both programs, what do you wish you could have told yourself back then that now? What would you have done differently from the get?
Slow down and enjoy this chaotic period. Outside of that, I would say only really focus on what matters in the business, which is keeping the people that we brought and bringing more people in.
Yeah. Offense and defense.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, cool. Out of curiosity, given that this is a topic too that I find interesting, and your background in, especially with the kids strength conditioning side of things, What role have you found has social media, especially like IG and TikTok, played in kids getting in the weight room? Because I feel like I see younger and younger people getting in the weight room. Like when I was in high school, which honestly wasn't that long ago, almost like a decade ago, there was only a handful of people like me that we would go to our local LA Fitness and lift weights and train hard. Whereas I feel like a lot more kids, the gym is like a cool thing to do now. Have you seen an uptick in that? Like, is social media played a big role there?
I mean, one side of me is like, yeah, I love the awareness behind it. Like, I love that it's letting kids be more comfortable with going into an environment like that. Like you said, when you were younger, it was not like that. Like, if you weren't an athlete, there's very rarely that you would see people training in the gym compared to now. And I think that's cool, but it has to be for the right reasons. So like the awareness is great, but I think attention seeking or like misinformation side of things or just doing what's popular. Like I try to kind of dispel those things with the guys that come in and the kids that come in so they can teach their friends when they go lift with each other. And so they do it safely. Like that's always my biggest thing especially with college kids coming for me for 3 months and they go back to school where there's one strength coach for 30 kids. Like that's how I got hurt. So I realized like, okay, let me teach these kids the right skills so that they can be independent and help their friends. Outside of all the information they consume, I can only do so much. But to me, it's decision making. The awareness is good, but you have to be able, like anything, like be able to do your own research and make decisions for yourself and try things out and mess up in a safe way. But
do you feel like though, I mean, social media, has it been a net positive for, like I look at powerlifting, because, that's my gym's so powerlifting, right? And I think obviously social media has been a net positive for me from like a business standpoint and awareness and things like that. And as the sport grows, our business grows just because that's the gist. Would you say it's been the same for athlete strength conditioning though? Like or does it sometimes take away from the reason we're there in the first place, which is to get better?
I'm going to give another yes and no. Like you'll see LeBron, you'll see Cristiano Ronaldo, you see all these players like training in the gym. So you're like, oh, that's cool. I want to go do that. But then you're training their way when they're at their level and you're not at their level. So like that's good that you're motivated by that, but no, you shouldn't be just copying them because that's what you see. Like those two do not connect for performance reasons. We're biased because we own gyms, clearly, but I think it's good. It's more so teaching kids how to think the right way or to really see like what matters. Again, going back to like, what is the priority? Okay, if I play soccer, should I train like a bodybuilder? Probably not. Am I going to do it because I want to have a six pack for the summer? Probably. So it's like, come on, like give me give and take. That's what I like to do when I like actually train the kids. Like, okay, we're going to do all our performance stuff. And if you want to do arms at the end, like we'll do arms. Like, that's fine. But don't just do arms.
It's funny. And I hope he doesn't care if I say this, but like, so I work with Luke. Oh no.
He does rugby, right?
Yeah, Luke. Oh my God, Luke. Why can't I remember your last name right now? Gee, this is the early onset Alzheimer's right here. Luke Lewis. Jesus. Okay. And Luke's brother is Flex Lewis. And Luke was telling me one time, he's like, dude, like Flex just, he thinks bodybuilding training is like the answer to everything for sport. And Luke obviously has like his master's. He's super knowledgeable, has worked very high level athletes and rugby, MMA, all different sports. And, I think that Luke was telling me one time, he's like, oh yeah, Gordon Ryan, one of the best jiu-jitsu athletes right now, posted a video of him doing like a bodybuilding workout. And Luke did like an impression of his brother. He's like, see, my brother would be like, that's how you fucking train. Like, just stuff like that. And it's not, but that's what we see. We see it's C-Bum, right? He's like the popular bodybuilder for the Gen Zers these days. And it's not how you train. I think it's tough because, so some of these things, right? Like maybe social media is getting kids in the gym because they see it's flashy, it's cool, it's fun. But at the same time, it's okay, well, what's the right thing to do? I used to see that back in the day with, kids wanting to I was a kid maxing out on my bench every other week or whatever. And then, explaining like, oh no, for long-term results, like we don't want to do that.
Blew out my shoulder like 3 times just to, for what?
Yeah. It's so funny too, because I used to make fun of the old heads and how they would always be like, I used to bench press 500 pounds, or I used to do this and that. But now I feel like I'm that guy. Like we have Gen Zers in our gym who they bring their carpets now to put under the bench press, and shoes for each lift and a song for each lift, and wait for a certain rack to open up. And back in my day, we would just show up and like lift weights. And I think there's a balance there. And look, again, as a business owner, if that's the culture, I need to facilitate that culture and support it to an extent. But it comes to a point of detriment where, like you said, with like LeBron, a kid seeing how LeBron trains and thinking that's how I need to train. You're talking about the 1% of the 1%. And same thing in powerlifting, these kids maybe see that some of the top lifters are literally just doing SBD days at, high percentage singles and not a lot of, let's say, accessory work, when in reality, accessory work might be what creates the base for them to grow long term. And they're not thinking in 5 or 10 years. And neither was I when I was a powerlifter, like as a junior or a teen. It was like, how do I win this tournament? How do I, win and make the world team or whatever it is right now, this second, because that's all that matters, because life felt so, finite in that moment. And that's why I'm sure, I've never really worked with athletes that weren't necessarily adults. And I'm sure that's a difficult thing to broach, but also at the same time, I mean, kudos to you for your facility. I'm sure has led to some really good positive examples for some of these athletes and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we always say this, like life, training, sport, business, they're all the same. And like on this topic, I think just care about what matters most and you'll probably figure things out. Like put most of your eggs. That's one thing I didn't do. Like I was always distracted by everything going on just because I would always have a lot of ideas, but then I would forget, like, this is who we're trying to serve. This is what we try to give them. Focus on that and you'll make your money. Like don't chase like the quick cash grab just to get away from what you're about. And I think now I'm there and I'm happy that like I can teach kids the right things and hopefully they go on to, because it's not just about whatever, you play your sport for 8 years. If you go to play college, or if you go to play pro, I don't know, but at least you know what it feels like to trust yourself in the gym, to teach other people, to delay gratification. Those are the things I care about. So
100%.
I'm glad I built a brand off that.
Yeah. So from a business tactics standpoint, what are some things that you found? Obviously, you've worked with both adults and kids and grown the gym with both, but what are some things that are just like, if you were speaking to another gym owner that caters towards kids and sport training, what are some considerations they should have going into that? Let's say you're talking to someone who's going from, a business that mainly supported adults, now that one that's supporting kids. What are some particular considerations there that you've found that have been helpful to you to grow the business? Like I know one we've discussed is seasonal, like the seasons. Yeah.
Sure. Definitely how cyclical the seasons are depending on the athletes that you serve. Not saying just because I'm the soccer guy that I'm not going to get baseball, football, wrestling, lacrosse. I will, but it's just easier for me to talk the same language to soccer players. So I have to take in consideration that these kids go very heavy in the fall, a bit more in the spring, a little less in the spring, but they're playing all year round. They play maybe 2-3 games a week. They're training 2, 3, 4 times a week on top of the gym, on top of technical training. So like these kids are always training, they're always traveling. So as far as marketing and programming and where we put our effort, I guess, changes a lot depending on soccer players and where they're at with their season.
And from a business standpoint too, like what were some of the growing pains you realized, like crap, based on the seasons, how did that affect business?
I think definitely not being proactive kind of like bit me in the ass. So like the same exact thing, once I started to realize like, okay, I can't get away with just coasting on all soccer players as my priority. Like I need to find the alternate season sport. So if I'm looking for athletes to fill in my fall spot, I got to be looking for the spring athletes. If I'm looking for athletes to fill my winter spot, I need to be looking at the fall athletes. So just looking at the seasons ahead to proactively reach out to those kids or change our marketing or change our social media to talk to those kind of parents and kids.
Mm-hmm. So just figuring out how you speak to that population and keep the momentum going year round. Because if you rely on one group, there's going to be a period of which it's at a lull, and then you got to pay your costs and things are tight.
Well, the other thing you could also do, since you have both groups, if you have the adults and the athletes, like you just push adults more during, summer or like back to school times or winter, and then athletes on all the other times. So it depends on for me, it's a lot of space issues, a lot of time issues, a lot of staff issues. So like you have all the space and all the time, and I would rock both at the same time, just put effort on different ways or just move the scale.
100%. What do you think is one of the biggest things that you, like a decision you make that like you made that really impacted your trajectory in the business? Like, what was like one or two things that made a change here?
That's a really good question. Big decision. I can't think of one.
Yeah, or like if you look back, you're like, for you, maybe it's getting your own space or deciding to focus on one thing. I look back, I'll go with mine maybe. And I think of like some big decisions. Well, one was my second expansion. Obviously, like I feel like that's a cop out, but at the same time, I was at a place where, we were doing like 30K a month and it was good. Profitability was there. It was solid. All the numbers were really strong. But I sort of realized that only my dreams could fit in that facility. I wouldn't be able to fit other people's dreams. My team members, they wouldn't be able to achieve the things they want to achieve. I wouldn't be able to provide them those opportunities in such, that size of a space. So rather than staying comfortable, I decided, let's yeet this thing and jump off the cliff, build the airplane on the way down, which is Reid Hoffman quote, founder of LinkedIn, and go. And it paid off. And actually, I'm going through the same exercise again, looking at another expansion, feeling the same feelings, even just 10x now, because it's more to lose, more to risk. But I'm hoping in 5 years from now, I say the same thing, like that this was a decision that impacted me. So maybe what was something, or a few things that impacted you where you were like, dang, like looking back, thank goodness I did that, or I bet on myself, or a decision I made to change something, or you have one of those?
I think definitely one is opening my first facility, because that was the dream that I was chasing for a long time, and just taking the shot at it and trusting that like, okay, all these things are falling into place because this is probably meant to happen right now. I think that was kind of scary, but also like, okay, I'm on the right path. So I would say that decision. And I don't really like remember big decisions like that within the business. It's more so little revelations that I have, like when I'm in like the trenches and I'm like day after day doing the same thing. And then one time it just takes like one little thought to be like, oh, this is what I have to change. Like we were talking about before, like things that you see all the time kind of like clouds your vision. And then once you have that little like aha moment, you're like, oh shit, like that's what I need to do. But that's why it's important to stay on top of the metrics and like the team meetings and having the conversations. Just all the boring shit leads to those big, 10x moments, 20x moments. And that's like what I think we've like really honed in on a lot. Like do the work that you need to do, take your foot off when you need to take your foot off. And then when it's hot, like go. And I think that's like the biggest lesson.
I think it was Naval Ravikant that said 99% of the work is meaningless, but it leads you to the 1% that matters. And I think that a lot of times we're searching for the 1%, but we're not by only focusing on the 1%. We don't know what 1% it is. Like we don't know where to find it. We're just sort of looking for that, again, that shortcut, the easy grab, and it leads us away from all the 99, the boring stuff, which actually then leads us to the things that matter. And I think every big decision I've made, or like aha moment or come to Jesus moment, whatever you want to call it, that has impacted our trajectory for my business has come from a mistake or two, or like going down the wrong path, but finding out like you don't know which path is the wrong path until you try to walk the path. Mm-hmm. And I think that many people are afraid of that. They're afraid of making the wrong move, but the only way you figure out what's right is to figure out what's wrong.
The wrong no move.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only wrong move, is not trying. Like failure is okay as long as you just keep getting back up. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of people, they freeze up and they don't make a move, and they get paralysis by analysis, and then therefore life passes them by and opportunities pass them by, and that sucks. So I definitely think that's a huge superpower that some business owners have, is just the willingness to take the leap and try, and then figure out then from there, what direction do we need to go based on the data that I have, which is, okay, this didn't work, so let me try the next thing. What do you think has been like the hardest part about gym business, running a gym? And it can be tactical, technical, it could be personal. Like what's been hard for you?
I think personal, for sure. And we talk about this a lot. So just I'm still learning who I am as a man. So like me trying to manage all these people and give my heart to all these people it's really difficult. And it's been very difficult the past 2-3 years. And I'm learning the hard way that it's the same and it's not. It's intertwined and it's not. And the time, I don't even know, like the effort that you put to other people has to be the same for yourself. And I'm starting to realize that, again, the hard way, that if I'm not doing the best for myself, there's no way I can give my best to all the other people. And at the same time, if I'm giving everything to other people, there's nothing left for me. So I'm learning the best way of how to lead, how to keep things running, how to delegate better, how to automate better, how to systematize things better, just so a lot of it isn't in my brain. And that's just how I am as a person. I think a lot. I ask a lot of questions. I want to find the answers. I want to fail fast. I want to move forward. I want to shoot big. I don't like doing like the little detail stuff. I don't like
you're a visionary. You're not.
I like moving bigger pieces. I like seeing 10x returns. Like that stuff gets me going. Not the okay, we have to do this, and this every day. Like yes, I do it, and yes, it's important. It's just not as fulfilling or is not as exciting as okay, we got some big plays to make. Like which one are we going to take a risk on? Like that's what really gets me going.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough. I've gone through similar transitions where when we start, right, we don't know what direction we want to go. We don't know if we want to stay in the business, we want to exit, what we want to do. Like people ask me all the time, when are you opening your second location? Like that seems to be like everyone thinks that's just the next step. I don't know why they think that. Like maybe it's because there's like a gajillion McDonald's or In-N-Outs or whatever franchise. And so people just think, oh, if you have a brick and mortar business, you're just supposed to get more of them. When it's obviously not that easy. You know, if you're listening and you have one location, you're thinking about a second, there's a lot of things to think about. And the reason I've never done it and decided to grow a big one to $1 million is purely just because I don't want to split my time. I don't want to split my team. I don't want to split the culture. There's more negatives that you potentially risk than getting any sort of net positive. That for me, it was never worth it. And I think for you, it was similar in the sense of it's risky, it's scary, and people assume what your dreams are, but that may not necessarily be what you want to do. And you're still figuring yourself out. We're both in our 20s, late 20s, and we don't have all the answers. We just know based on our experiences what we do, what we like and what we don't like. And we just try to make decisions based on those things. So yeah. And how do you, it's almost like being a parent when it comes to staff. You're like, how do you provide if you're not 100% set, sort of know what you want yourself? It's really difficult. And I think that's what makes small business super hard too, is it's not necessarily always on autopilot. I mean, you really have to step in. You really have to communicate the vision. You have to embrace a little bit of the chaos, which can be hard for a lot of people. And it can be tough. And I think that leads to a lot of failure for like a lot of folks that give up. But, there's some that stay in. What would you say to someone who wants to open up a gym? Like just a gym, they don't know what kind of gym, they just want to open up a gym. What would you say to someone like that? What were maybe a piece of advice you'd give them as they jump into this phase?
Why? Nah, because then that changes. Am I looking for consistency and passive income, or am I looking to scale this out and then keep franchising? Like that definitely changes with how if my gym burned down now and I was going to restart, I would literally ask, okay, why? If I'm going to start,
what's the purpose?
Yeah. What's the timeline going to be? Who are we going to go after? Like that makes your pathway to what you want to achieve way better than what we did, or at least what I did. I was just kind of freestyling the whole way. So I would ask why. What is the purpose of your gym? Who's going to come to it? What kind of staff do you need to hire? Because ours is heavily like people to people service, community based. So if my people aren't right, then it doesn't fit the culture, and then we're not going to get the right people in the gym, and then everything's going to fall apart. If I have the right staff, different people, well, let me say, obviously not everyone's going to love everyone, but if you click with certain people and they come just to see you, or you'll hold them accountable, like that's huge. Like you can't, especially with AI now, like you can't create those relationships anywhere outside of, I don't know, places that are small businesses, small communities, whether it's a restaurant or a salon or even a gym. Like authentic relationships, I feel like for me are hard to find now. And I'm only 28, so I think that's huge to what kind of business that you want. But if you're running a huge Globo gym, you don't need that. You just need nice equipment. You need people to work and things operate. That's it. So I would ask why. What's the point?
And one of the things too that I talk to people a lot is setting realistic expectations with realistic time horizons. Again, this all ties back into we think it can be done overnight. A lot of it has to do with social media, seeing everyone just winning all the time because they never post their L's. Looking back, was this the trajectory you predicted for yourself, like to where you're at now? I mean, how has it been different than what you thought it would be?
In my life or in the gym?
The gym.
Oh, okay. I would say no, I could not have predicted.
Okay. Now, was it harder than you thought it would be? Like the reason I asked, so one of the things I listen to obviously like a lot of podcast entrepreneurs, and I was listening to a podcast called How I Built This by Guy Raz, shameless plug, go for it. And he was interviewing the founder of Rivian, the electric trucks. Shout out Rivian, they're actually nearby here. We have a few of their employees at the gym. And one of the things he said was if he knew how long it was going to take to actually get a product to market, he doesn't think he would have done it. Like, he's glad he did. Like, looking back, he's glad he did. But if he knew how hard it was going to be, it would have been, I think, maybe too daunting of an undertaking in his mind to do. And so that's what I ask, is like, if you would have known what you know now, would you still have gone this path? Was it different than you thought it would be? You know, what was real, like what really happened versus what you thought would happen, I guess.
No, I wouldn't change anything. I don't regret going this way, whether I could have made more money or whether it could be shorter, whether I could have a bigger gym or more people or live a different life. I don't regret any of it because now I have everything I have is irreplaceable. So I have the skills to build another business. I have the knowledge of how to operate one. I have all these relationships that, I don't know, fate would have put these other people into my life, so I don't regret any of that. What went different though is you achieve your dream and you think you're going to find this rush of fulfillment and live this free entrepreneurial life, but in reality is the complete opposite. And I think that was like a hard pill to swallow because I hit the pinnacle that I thought was the pinnacle. And now it's like, oh shit, we're a small fish again. And I didn't expect all of that to happen. So that was kind of like a reality check for me. But again, I grew so much in 3 years that I would never take back anything that I've been through to be where I am now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the lessons, I think so many people discount, like, again, money, growth, like a lot of those things are results of the effort, and they are quantitative markers of quote unquote like success or achievement, but there are qualitative markers as well. And one of those is just being a better business owner and or better person, better leader. I was talking with one of my mentors the other day, we were looking at, do we buy, because we need to expand our gym, like, do we buy a building? Do we lease? And I have fear, obviously innate fear, just because it's a risk. And one of the things he posed was, think about the businessman you will become after this is done, after you make the transaction, after you buy the building, lease the building, make this expansion. And so that made things feel better for me because I said, okay, whether or not win or lose, like, I become more knowledgeable and can lead with more knowledge and share more knowledge and do all that. And I value knowledge. Like, that's something that I think is really important. I think I love to learn, and I love to learn by doing. That's how I learn. And so it was nice to hear, just because, okay, at the end of the day, like, I walk away with new intelligence on this topic that I can hopefully share and mentor others with. And so it made it feel better. And that's what I've shifted, I think, a lot of my purpose and my drive to. It's less about the numbers. I'm good. Like, my life's good. I've got enough to do what the things I want to do. I have good balance for the most part. And so for me, it's purely about, how do I attain more knowledge, in this sector, and how do I help others do similar things? And so I think one of the things we spoke about earlier is like purpose, the why, and even just like when you want to open a gym, why? Well, why in terms of what's the financial plan, the tactics of it, but also why, how does this align with you personally? And is this the undertaking you want to put your energy in? I think is really important as well. So I think that's a good one.
Yeah,
there.
I think our brain naturally thinks of, just for survival, like, okay, I have a situation, I have potential risk, here's everything that could go wrong.
Yeah.
But it takes like you taking a second to be like, okay, let's think of what can go right. And if like you can tolerate what goes wrong and for the risk that what like could go right, then yeah, why not? And I think that's kind of where our brains have gotten us to, and like that's why we're where we're at.
Yeah. How much of you being entrepreneurial was nature? Like, how much were you a natural entrepreneur, or were these skills acquired? Were you thrust into it? What do you think?
I'm laughing because I ask myself this question every day. Like, am I cut out for this shit? I don't. As far as like finances and money and selling stuff, like what you think of like you, like when I think entrepreneur, I think of you as a kid. We met, I'd be like, oh, this kid's gonna fucking do something. Yeah. As far as business, me, no, I don't think I was like that at all. I think I just had the skills of I care about people. I know how to work hard. I pay attention to everything. I can bring people together. I think those kind of skills led me to being the kind of entrepreneur I am, not the financial side at all. I think it's more so like how my brain works, how I think about things, how I look at bigger pictures that led me to this, not, okay, these are the numbers that we need to hit. This is how we're going to do it. Like I never thought like that ever growing up.
Got you. Yeah, I think that some people, again, they just find themselves in the entrepreneurial role, even if like they aren't your, I guess the means where I was selling duct tape wallets in third grade and doing lemonade stands and stuff. But I think at the end of the day that it doesn't matter. It's either you're sort of I find people are usually like the salesperson that they get into it, or they're a little bit more of an operator where they are just good at something, and all of a sudden they're, then the next step is, I'll just do it for myself versus working for someone else. And I think you were more of the latter, but either way, it still leads you to the same result, no matter what. So,
I mean, either way, I think like if you're in either of those boats, whether you're a number guy or like a worker kind of guy, the next step becomes leadership. And that's, I think, the hardest one to get. So I feel like if you're already a leader and people come to you for advice, or you can get people together, or you know how to communicate, then you can figure out the other two way easier.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the way I went. But yeah, I just keep I keep thinking of you like in middle school, just selling candy bars in the middle of the hall.
Slinging deals, man, slinging deals. Yeah, I love sales. What can I say? It started young, but well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time today, dude. I think that some of this stuff can really help some other people and gym owners, entrepreneurs struggling, because I think a lot of us struggle. We struggle silently. And not a lot of the people get it because most people are not entrepreneurs. And so I think this episode will be really helpful, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the Gym Growth Tactics podcast. If you found value in this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow entrepreneurs who could benefit from this podcast. Keep striving for success. And remember, you're not alone in your entrepreneurial journey.